Hey y'all, this is Mr. Mason. You won't believe what happened at the family reunion. They mocked my son's cries like it was nothing, but the moment my brother's convoy rolled up, everything changed. Suddenly, all those smirks froze. But here's the thing. They didn't just make fun of my son. They made a fool of me. And I've had enough. Now, the truth's about to come out, but at what cost? Keep watching because this fight for justice ain't over yet. The wind howled outside as I walked up the steps to the front door, my boots crunching against the cold, packed snow. I took a deep breath, the frigid air biting at my nostrils, but it didn't matter. I was used to the cold. I'd been used to the cold for years now, though not the kind of cold that came from the weather. It was the kind of cold that settled deep in your chest and gnawed at your insides. The cold of being ignored, the cold of being forgotten. The cold that came from being the father who'd always been there, but had never really belonged. I pushed open the door, the familiar creak of the hinges greeting me like an old friend. I stepped inside, and for a moment, the warmth of the house wrapped around me, but it wasn't enough to shake the chill that had settled in my bones. The reunion was supposed to be a time for family to come together, but when I walked into that living room, I knew right away. This wasn't a family that welcomed me. I wasn't sure they'd ever truly seen me. No one greeted me. No, "Hello, Dad." No, "Hey, Mr. Mason." I might as well have been a stranger walking through the door. I stood there for a moment, letting the door swing shut behind me, my eyes scanning the room. The cousins were gathered around the TV, their laughter filling the space, but no one seemed to acknowledge my presence. My son Elijah was sitting on the floor near the couch, his face buried in his hands. I tried to shake off the feeling of being invisible, but it lingered. It always did. "Hey, Elijah," I said, trying to sound cheerful, though I knew it wasn't going to be enough. He looked up, his eyes red, tears streaking down his cheeks. I felt a knot form in my stomach. He wasn't the only one who'd been ignored, though I had a feeling his pain was deeper than mine. "Are you okay?" I asked, crouching down beside him. He nodded, but his gaze flickered to the cousins. They were laughing at him, at his pain. The mocking sounds of their voices made my blood boil. "Stop it," I said, standing up, my voice steady but firm. "Stop mocking him." But the laughter only grew louder. It was as if my words didn't even matter. My heart sank as I realized something I'd known for a long time. I had no power here. Not anymore. Flashbacks came rushing at me, images of the past, of years spent providing for this family, sacrificing my own needs for theirs, trying to hold everything together. But no matter how hard I worked, no matter how much I gave, it was never enough. It was as if I was invisible to them, just like Elijah was now. I had spent my life giving everything I had to keep this family together. I had been the rock, the one who always showed up, the one who never wavered. And what had it gotten me? A cold reception, a family that mocked me behind my back, that took me for granted, a son who cried in pain and was laughed at by his cousins. I looked down at Elijah, my heart breaking. I wanted to protect him. I wanted to shield him from this cruel world, this world where love was conditional, where the people who should love you most were the ones who hurt you the most. But I couldn't even protect him here. I tried to step in to calm the situation, but it was like I was invisible to them too. Then the argument started. It was over something stupid, as usual. A comment about the food, a disagreement about where the kids should sit. But it quickly escalated, and once again, I found myself trying to be the peacemaker, trying to calm the storm that was brewing in this house. "You don't get it," one of my nephews sneered at me. "You're always playing the peacekeeper. Why don't you just mind your own business?" I clenched my fists at my sides. I couldn't believe it. All the years I'd given, all the sacrifices, and this was how they treated me. "I've been minding my business," I said, my voice low and steady. "But I'm done." The room fell silent for a moment, as if they were shocked by my words. But no one said anything. They just stared at me, waiting for me to back down. And for a moment, I considered it. I had been silent for so long, always putting my family's needs above my own. I had let them walk all over me for so long, but not anymore. I walked over to Elijah and pulled him into my arms, holding him close, trying to shield him from the cruelty of this family. The laughter had stopped, but the damage had already been done. "You're not alone," I whispered to him, my voice shaking with emotion. "I won't let them do this to you. Not anymore." Just as I thought I might have a moment of peace, the doorbell rang. A loud, jarring sound that echoed through the house. The tension in the room was palpable, and I knew exactly who was standing on the other side of that door. My brother. And I knew, as soon as he stepped through that door, everything would change. I stood at the window, watching as the convoy of cars slowly made its way down the street. The sight of them brought a strange mix of anticipation and dread. The kind of feeling you get when you know a storm is coming, but you're not sure if you're prepared for it. My brother was back. After all these years, he was finally here, and I could feel the shift in the air already. The wind had calmed down, but inside the house, the tension was thicker than ever. I could hear the laughter of my relatives from the living room, but it felt distant, muffled. My thoughts were with my brother, as always. He was the golden child, the one who had always been favored by everyone, our parents, our relatives, even the community. He was the one who got the opportunities, the one who never had to work as hard as I did to make something of himself. And now he was back. He was walking into the very family that had always seen me as the dependable, hard-working one, but never as the one who truly mattered. I had spent my life trying to keep this family together, but it was always him they turned to. It was always him who got the praise, the recognition, while I stood in the background playing the role of the one who made sure everything ran smoothly, even if no one ever saw the sacrifices I made. My brother was the one everyone turned to when they needed help, while I was the one who quietly did the hard work behind the scenes. It didn't matter how much I gave, it was never enough. Now, as I watched him step out of his car and walk up the driveway, I knew that everything would change. The balance would shift. My brother was about to walk into the house and take his place at the center of everything, and I would once again be pushed aside. He didn't even notice me standing by the window. It wasn't a surprise. He never did. The doorbell rang, and I could already hear the family's excited voices from inside the house. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I had to be calm. I had to keep my composure. As he entered, the atmosphere in the room immediately shifted. The chatter stopped, and all eyes turned to him. It was as if the sun had just risen in a room that had been drenched in darkness for years. My brother had a way of commanding attention without even trying. His presence alone had the power to make everything else fade into the background. And just like that, I was invisible again. I felt a pang of bitterness rise in my chest, but I swallowed it down. It wasn't worth it. I had learned long ago that getting angry or upset about it wouldn't change anything. But damn it, it still hurt. There was a moment when our eyes met across the room. He smiled, and I forced a smile back. It was a small, polite smile, one that didn't mean anything. I tried to make myself believe that it didn't bother me, but the truth was that it did. He'd always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. And here I was, standing in his shadow once again. My relatives crowded around him, hanging on every word he said as if he were the only person in the room who mattered. They didn't even acknowledge my presence as usual. It was like I was invisible, like I was just a ghost, hovering around, waiting for the moment when I could finally be seen. But the moment never came, and I wasn't sure it ever would. The conversation flowed easily around him, as if he had just stepped off the pedestal they had placed him on all those years ago. It was like nothing had changed. He was still the one who commanded attention, who got the accolades, who was respected, and I was still the one who was expected to just go along with it, to take care of everything without asking for anything in return. I tried to stay quiet. I tried to let it all wash over me, to ignore the frustration that was bubbling up inside me, but it was getting harder to keep the lid on it. I wanted to scream, to shout at them all, to let them know how much they had taken me for granted, how much I had given and how little I had received in return. But I didn't. I just stood there, watching my brother interact with the family, watching the way they all leaned in to hear his every word. The tension inside me grew, and I could feel the familiar ache in my chest. The same ache I had carried with me for years. I wanted to tell him how I felt. I wanted to confront him about all the years of resentment I had buried deep inside. But I didn't. I couldn't. Instead, I took a deep breath and tried to swallow the bitterness. I had learned long ago that nothing would change. Nothing would ever be different. And if I wanted to survive this family, I would have to keep pretending. Keep pretending that I was fine, even though I wasn't. But as I stood there, watching my brother laugh and joke with the family, I felt a shift in the air. Something was changing, and I wasn't sure I could keep pretending anymore. The tension in the room was palpable, like a thick fog that no one could escape. The words I'd just spoken still hung in the air, unsettling everyone. The silence that followed my declaration was deafening, and I could feel the eyes of the family on me, their judgment hanging heavy. Some relatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats, unsure of how to react to my outburst. My son, still sitting beside me, seemed to feel the weight of it all. I could tell he was processing what had just happened. He was watching me, and I could feel his resentment growing, the same resentment that had been quietly building in me for years. It was starting to show on his face now, in the way he looked at his family. He could feel the coldness, too. As for me, I felt a strange mix of pride and shame. Part of me was proud that I had finally spoken up, that I had finally found my voice, but another part of me felt like an outcast in my own home. I just rocked the boat, and I wasn't sure if I'd be able to stay afloat. My brother, however, didn't seem as affected as I'd hoped. He was taken aback for a moment, but it didn't take long for him to regain his composure. I watched as his lips curled into a smug smile, his eyes narrowing. He responded with that same mocking tone I knew all too well, trying to assert his dominance again, trying to remind everyone that he was still the favorite, the one in control. "That's a bit of a momentary lapse, don't you think?" he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "I mean, it's just a family reunion, not a courtroom. Let's not get too dramatic here." The words hit me like a slap across the face. His dismissiveness made my blood boil, but I couldn't let him see it. Not yet. I stood there, staring at him, my fists clenched by my sides. I knew he was trying to undermine me again, to belittle everything I had just said, but I wasn't going to let it slide, not anymore. I took a slow breath, pushing the anger down. But the resentment that had been building for years, the feeling of being invisible, was bubbling up again. I didn't have much left to lose. Not now. In that moment, something shifted inside me. I wasn't going to let him walk all over me again. I wasn't going to let him dismiss my pain and my frustration as if it were nothing. It wasn't just about the past anymore. It was about standing up for myself. It was about finally being seen. I knew what I had to do. But the question was, what would the cost be? What would I lose by speaking my truth? The thought made my stomach twist, but I couldn't turn back. I was already too far in. The night dragged on, each passing moment like another weight being added to my chest. My brother's presence only made it worse, amplifying every moment I'd been ignored, every time my sacrifices had been overshadowed. As the night wore on, the tension between us simmered beneath the surface. At the dinner table, the air was thick with uncomfortable silence. No one seemed to know what to say, and I could feel their eyes darting between me and my brother, waiting for the next move. It was as if they were all silently praying that this would blow over, that I would go back to playing my part and everything would return to normal. But I couldn't. Not anymore. I glanced at my son, sitting next to me, his expression conflicted. He was still uncomfortable, unsure of where to place his loyalty. He didn't know what to make of this new version of his father, the one who was finally standing up for himself. I could see the discomfort in his eyes, but there was something else there too. Something that looked like pride, like he was finally seeing me for who I really was. I shifted my gaze back to my brother, who was now speaking to another relative, as if nothing had happened. He was pretending like everything was fine, like his words hadn't hurt me. I could feel the anger rising again. My brother, the golden child, always getting away with everything, always the one who was praised. But I wasn't going to let him get away with it this time. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor, and the room fell silent. My brother looked at me, his eyebrows raised as if he was surprised that I was still there. I could feel the weight of everyone's gaze on me, but I didn't care anymore. I was done being quiet. Enough, I said, my voice shaking but firm. I'm not doing this anymore. I've been overlooked, disrespected, and ignored for far too long. Not just by you, but by all of you. I've spent my life making sure everyone else was happy, that everything was in order, and what do I get in return? Nothing. I've been the one to hold this family together, and you don't even see it. My brother's face hardened, and I saw the shift in his eyes. For a moment, I thought he might actually understand. But then, the familiar smugness returned. He leaned back in his chair and laughed, but it wasn't a laugh of amusement. It was a laugh of superiority. Is this really what this is about? He asked, as if he couldn't believe I was actually confronting him. You've always been the martyr, Mason, always trying to play the hero. This isn't the time for a pity party. You should calm down. His words stung, but I wasn't going to let him diminish me again. I held my ground, feeling my fists tighten. I'm done being your scapegoat, I said, my voice low but unwavering. I'm done letting you walk all over me. You don't get to do this to me anymore. There was a brief silence as the words sank in. The room felt smaller now, and the tension was so thick I could almost taste it. But I didn't back down. Not this time. My brother, trying to regain control, leaned forward with that smug expression on his face. You think this changes anything? He sneered. You think you're the one who's been carrying this family? Please, I've been the one doing the real work. You're just bitter because I've done more than you ever could. I could feel the anger rising in my chest, but I wasn't going to let it explode. Not yet. I turned to my son, who was watching us closely. I knew this was hard for him to see. It was hard for me too, but I wasn't going to back down. Not anymore. The room was silent, everyone waiting for the next move. But I didn't need to say anything else. I had made my point, and now it was time to wait for the fallout. The house had grown eerily quiet since the confrontation. The laughter and chatter that had filled the air earlier had faded into silence, like a storm passing but leaving a palpable tension behind. I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd said to my brother and the way the family had reacted to it. Had it been the right choice? Was it too much? The weight of my words still felt heavy, pressing down on my chest as I sat alone in the dimly lit living room, staring out the window into the blackened sky. I had spent my whole life trying to hold things together, trying to keep the peace. But that night, I'd let it all out. And now, I wondered whether it had been worth it. There was a certain satisfaction in having spoken my truth, but the fear of what might come next gnawed at me. Looking back, I realized how much I'd sacrificed over the years for this family. I had spent long hours at jobs I hated, neglected my own desires, and kept the peace, even when the world didn't care about my struggles. I had tried to be the rock, the constant, but in the end, I was just the one who held it all up without anyone noticing. Maybe I'd made a mistake by confronting my brother like that. It felt like there was no turning back now, and I didn't know if I was ready for what might come next. My son entered the room, his footsteps hesitant. He had been avoiding me ever since the scene at dinner. I could see it in the way he looked at me. His respect for me was mixed with confusion and discomfort. He wasn't sure what to make of his old man standing up, speaking his mind, and challenging the family's status quo. I could sense he was torn between feeling proud of me and fearing the consequences. "Dad," he said softly, his voice shaky. "Are you okay?" I sighed, feeling the exhaustion settle in. "Yeah, son. I'm fine. I just needed to get that off my chest." I don't know what to think," he admitted. "It's just, I never thought you'd do something like that." I looked at him, trying to find the right words. "Son, standing up for yourself isn't about winning or losing. It's about finding your voice. You don't have to be loud, but you do need to be heard. I've been silent for too long. It's not about the family hearing me, it's about me hearing myself. His eyes softened, and for a brief moment I saw the understanding in them. We were two sides of the same coin, both trying to make our way through a world that hadn't given us a fair shake. I guess I just don't want things to get worse, you know. I don't want you getting hurt. I nodded. I understand. But sometimes, son, you have to fight for what's right. And this is me fighting for myself. For you. For us. He was quiet for a moment, processing everything I had just said. I could tell it wasn't easy for him to come to terms with. I didn't want him to feel like he had to pick sides, but I wanted him to understand why I'd done what I did. I wanted him to see the bigger picture. Just as we were starting to find some peace in our conversation, my phone buzzed on the table. I reached over to grab it, expecting a message from someone else in the family. But it was my brother. I opened the message and his words hit me like a punch to the gut. You're causing unnecessary drama, Mason. This isn't the place for your issues. Get over it. I felt the blood rush to my face. It was exactly the kind of thing I'd expected from him. Dismissive, condescending, and completely unwilling to see my side. But his words, instead of breaking me, fueled the fire within me. He wasn't just ignoring me. He was trying to erase everything I had just said. Like it didn't matter. Like I didn't matter. I stared at the screen, my fingers trembling as I typed a response. But before I could send it, I stopped. What would be the point? He wasn't going to change. He never had. And as much as it pained me, I realized I couldn't waste any more energy trying to make him understand. I put my phone down, taking a long, steadying breath. The message was just another reminder that the fight wasn't over. I hadn't gotten through to him. Not yet, anyway. But that wasn't going to stop me. It only made me more determined. I had to get ready for what was coming next. The real confrontation, the one that would shape everything. I knew that my brother wasn't going to let this go. He would try to regain control, and I had to be prepared to face him head on. But not just him, everyone in that room. I had to take a stand for myself and for my son. The night seemed to drag on forever. I couldn't sleep, couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was brewing. The calm before the storm. I thought about calling an old friend for advice, someone who had been through similar family struggles, but I didn't need to hear someone else tell me what I already knew. I was done with waiting for permission. I was done being passive. I had made my move, and now I had to see it through. As the hours passed, I kept replaying the conversation with my son. I had told him to stand tall, to be strong. But what kind of example was I setting if I didn't take my own advice? Then the phone rang again. I picked it up, only to hear my brother's wife on the other end. Her voice was sweet, almost syrupy, like she was trying to soften the situation. Mason, I think we need to calm down, she said, her tone fake with concern. This whole thing is unnecessary. We're family. I could hear the judgment in her voice. She wasn't concerned about me. She was concerned about her own position. She was loyal to her husband, not to me. That much was clear. And once again, I felt the sting of being an outsider in my own family. Don't worry about it, I said, hanging up before she could say anything else. There was no point in pretending that anything she had to say would make a difference. The calm before the storm, I thought again. But the storm was coming, whether I was ready for it or not. I had made my choice. Now it was time to face the consequences. The family didn't waste any time. The moment I'd spoken my truth, the retaliation began. It was subtle at first, whispers, sideways glances, but it was there. The tension in the house grew thicker as the days passed. I could feel it, even when I didn't say a word. The moment I stood up for myself, I became the problem. I wasn't part of the family's peace anymore. I was the troublemaker, and they made sure I knew it. It didn't help that my son had noticed it too. He could sense the shift, the cold shoulder that was suddenly being directed at us. He came to me later that night, his face full of confusion. "Dad," he said, his voice trembling, "maybe we should just back off. Maybe it's not worth all this." I took a deep breath, holding his gaze. "No, son. Sometimes standing up for yourself means making things uncomfortable. And what we've done is long overdue. We can't keep swallowing our pride just to keep the peace. It's more important to be who you are, no matter the cost." I could see him processing my words, torn between the fear of making things worse and the desire to stand tall. I could feel his discomfort, his hesitation. But this moment wasn't just for me. It was for him, too. I had to show him that you didn't let others walk all over you, even if it meant facing the storm. Then came the message. My brother. I should have expected it. But when I saw his name light up on my phone screen, my blood ran cold. The message was short, cryptic. "You've made your move, Mason. Just know there's more to the story than you realize. You won't like what happens next." The threat was clear. He was warning me. He was trying to scare me back into silence. But I didn't flinch. Not this time. I could feel the weight of everything I'd done and everything that was coming bearing down on me. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the whole damn family. I couldn't go back to being the quiet one, the one who swallowed his pride and let them walk all over him. I had to fight, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid. But as I stared at the message, a feeling of betrayal crept in. This wasn't just coming from my brother, it was coming from someone else too. Someone I had trusted, someone I had thought would stand by me. It was my own flesh and blood, my sister. I had always thought that maybe, just maybe, she saw the cracks in the family. That she knew how manipulative our brother could be. But no, she had gone to him. She'd taken his side. And now she was giving him ammunition to use against me. It hit me harder than I expected. The sting of betrayal burned deep. My own sister had turned against me, and I had no idea how to fight back against that. It felt like the world was crumbling around me. But I wasn't backing down. Not now. Not ever. I knew I had to prepare for what was coming. This wasn't just a family squabble anymore. This was a war. And I was going to win it. The next morning, I found myself in the same spot as the night before, thinking, planning, gathering strength. I reached out to an old friend from my past. He was someone who had seen it all, someone who had been through his own battles with family, betrayal, and power struggles. "What do I do, man?" I asked him. "It feels like I'm fighting a losing battle." He let out a long sigh before answering. "You have to do what's right, Mason. And don't let fear make your decisions. Silence isn't peace. It's just fear wrapped in a smile. You have the power to change this. Don't let him silence you." His words hit me like a shot of adrenaline. He was right. Fear had been the reason I stayed quiet for so long. But now I was ready to take action. I couldn't let this continue, not for my sake and not for my son's. I had to go all in. Later that day, I found something that solidified my decision. I was going through some old family documents, searching for any leverage I could find when I stumbled upon an old heirloom, a piece of jewelry, something that belonged to my mother. My brother had always kept it close, treating it like a family treasure. But when I picked it up, I realized something. This wasn't just a piece of jewelry. It was a symbol of all the lies, all the manipulation. My brother had hidden this away just like everything else he'd kept secret. This item, this small trinket, was a reflection of everything that had been swept under the rug for years. And now, it was mine to use. I couldn't believe it, but I knew what I had to do. As the night approached, I prepared myself for the next phase. There would be a family dinner, another chance to confront my brother, another chance to make things right. But this time, I wouldn't be silent. I wasn't afraid anymore. When I walked into the house that evening, the tension hit me like a wall. The family was already there, sitting around the table, exchanging pleasantries. But the air was thick, and everyone could feel the storm that was coming. I sat down, my son standing behind me. He could feel the weight of everything too. And as the night progressed, the words started flying. My brother, ever the master manipulator, tried to steer the conversation in my direction. He accused me of causing drama, of ruining the family's image. His tone was condescending, and I could feel the anger boiling inside me. I wasn't going to let him get away with it. I spoke calmly, but every word was weighted with years of frustration. I called him out for what he had done, how he'd always manipulated the family, how he'd always played the victim while pushing me down. And then I did it. I pulled out the evidence, the things he'd hidden from everyone. The room fell silent. The family was in shock. My brother tried to regain control, his voice rising in desperation, but it was too late. The truth had come out. But my brother wasn't done. He tried to threaten me with my past, trying to use my own mistakes against me. But I was ready. I countered with something he never expected. A revelation that shook the entire family to its core. I had won. But the battle wasn't over. Not by a long shot. As the dinner came to a close, the room was divided. Some sided with me, others with my brother. The family was shattered, and there was no going back. But for the first time in years, I stood tall. My brother was no longer the kingpin of this family. He was a man exposed, and I had taken the first step toward reclaiming my dignity. The last words I spoke to him that night were simple, but they held weight. This is far from over. You've awakened a force you don't understand. As I walked out of that house, I knew the war wasn't over, but I had won this round. The calm before the storm. It wasn't a moment of peace, though. It was a moment of preparation. My mind, sharp and steady, was locked in. I could feel the weight of everything that had happened, the buildup, the anger, the betrayals. And now, it was all leading to this. I wasn't just going to stand there and take it anymore. I was done letting the family write my story for me. This time, I was writing it myself. I stared at the documents and recordings spread across the table in front of me. Everything I had carefully gathered, proof, receipts, admissions, ready to be laid out before my family. The truth had been buried for too long. It was time to bring it all to light. I thought of my wife. She was long gone, but her words still echoed in my head. You don't have to be the loudest in the room to have the most impact. She always knew how to cut through the noise. It was that quiet strength I needed now. The dinner tonight wouldn't just be any family gathering. I wasn't going to sit quietly and pretend anymore. I would make my stand, right here, right now. As I walked into the living room, my son was there, standing by the door, waiting. He could see it in my eyes. The change. The shift. "Dad," he said softly, his voice filled with uncertainty. "Are you sure about this? I mean, what happens after? What if it makes things worse?" I paused, putting my hand on his shoulder. "Sometimes, son, you have to stand tall for those who can't. We've been quiet too long. This is the only way." He looked at me, his eyes wide but filled with something else now. Respect, maybe. It wasn't fear, but understanding. He nodded, though I could tell he was still unsure. He knew what was coming, and so did I. Dinner began with all the usual pleasantries, but the air was thick with tension. I could feel it, like an invisible storm cloud hanging over the table. My brother sat at the head, trying to act like nothing was wrong. But I knew. He knew. And the rest of the family felt it too. We ate in silence mostly, save for the occasional awkward small talk. But the moment wasn't lost on me. I could feel his eyes on me. He was waiting for me to make a move, to crack, but I wouldn't. I wouldn't give him that satisfaction. Then it came, that first provocation. My brother, always the master manipulator, couldn't keep it in any longer. "Come on, Mason," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "You've made your point. Now let's move on. The family doesn't need your drama right now." I didn't flinch. I didn't even react. But inside, the anger was building. His words were like a knife twisting deeper. I had to stay calm, to play this right. His smirk grew as he pressed further. You're not fooling anyone, you know. Everyone sees what you're doing, stirring the pot. I could feel the heat rising, but I held it back. My heart pounded in my chest, but my voice was steady. No, what you don't understand is that I've been silent for too long. The silence doesn't mean peace. It's just fear wrapped in a smile. I'm not afraid anymore. The room fell silent. My brother, taken aback for a moment, tried to regain his composure, but I wasn't done, not by a long shot. I'm not the problem here, I continued, my voice cutting through the tension. You've been hiding behind your lies for too long. It's time for the truth to come out. And then I did it. I pulled out the documents I had carefully collected. Evidence. Proof of every manipulation, every scheme, every lie my brother had woven to keep control. The room went still. People gasped. My brother's face went pale as the truth hit the table, one piece at a time. His attempts to discredit me, to belittle me, seemed small now, pathetic even. Everything he had worked so hard to keep hidden was laid bare, and for the first time he wasn't in control anymore. But then, in an unexpected twist, I revealed something he hadn't counted on. A secret he thought he'd buried forever. A hidden inheritance. Money from our father. Money he'd been quietly siphoning off for years. I showed the evidence, and the look on my brother's face was priceless. The truth hit him like a ton of bricks. Enough, Mason, he said, his voice cracking now. He tried to recover, but it was too late. He was exposed. The room had already made its judgment. The family was divided. Those who had supported him now looked at him with doubt, and those who had stayed silent, who had been too afraid to speak up, now found their voices. Some turned away from him. Others tried to defend him, but it didn't matter. The truth was out, and my brother's facade was crumbling. But my sister, my estranged sister, stepped forward, taking the fight to the next level. She had one final blow to deliver. She presented a legal document. The inheritance wasn't just something my brother had stolen. It was rightfully mine. My brother had been manipulating everything for years, but now the truth was undeniable. Legally undeniable. The final nail in his coffin, I could feel it. Victory, bittersweet and hard-won. But the cost was high. I stepped outside for a moment, needing some air. The weight of what I had just done pressed heavily on me. I'd exposed my family for what they were. But in doing so, I'd lost something too. The family I had fought for, the family I'd sacrificed everything for, would never be the same. I leaned against the door, closing my eyes for a moment. Was it worth it? I asked myself. A voice interrupted my thoughts. My son walked out to join me, standing by my side. You did what was right, Dad, he said. I'm proud of you. The relief in his voice, the respect in his eyes, it meant everything. And as I stood there, I knew that no matter what happened, I had done the right thing. I had stood my ground. But as I reflected on everything, my phone rang. A lawyer. My brother was trying one last desperate move to silence me. I let the words sink in, feeling a cold rush of dread. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I stood there staring out over the yard, my mind racing. The fight may have ended tonight, but the war was far from over. The final decision would be mine. The weight of everything I had been through, the battles I'd fought, and the lies that had been buried so deep all came crashing down on me. I could feel the tension building in my chest as I sat quietly in my room. The final showdown was coming. My mind was clear now. No fear, no doubt. All that was left was resolve. It was like the calm before a storm, and this time I wasn't going to back down. I looked over the documents spread across the desk. The evidence I'd gathered was damning. No more whispers, no more hiding behind the shadows. The truth was out there, and it would finally be heard. I thought about my father's words. No one will respect you until you stand up for yourself. I wasn't just standing up for me anymore. I was standing up for everything I had ever believed in, for the future of my son, for everything that had been taken from us. My phone rang, pulling me out of my thoughts. It was my son. Dad, his voice was filled with concern. Are you sure about this? I mean, confronting him in front of the family, what if it all blows up? I leaned back in my chair, sighing. I knew what was coming. I knew the weight of it. It's time. I've been quiet long enough. The truth has to come out, son. We can't keep pretending. He didn't respond immediately, but I could hear the hesitation in his voice. He was worried. I could understand that, but I couldn't hold back anymore. Not for him, not for anyone. I hung up, my heart pounding. I knew the battle wasn't going to be easy, but this was it. The moment everything changed. I gathered everything I needed for tonight. The letters, the financial records, the audio recordings. This wasn't just about the inheritance. This wasn't just about money. It was about everything, every ounce of betrayal, every inch of manipulation. My brother had stolen too much from me and my family, and tonight I would make sure he couldn't take another thing. As I reviewed the documents one last time, I glanced at my son, standing in the doorway. He was watching me, his face a mix of fear, pride, and something else I couldn't quite place. He saw the man I had become, and I saw the man he was becoming. I'm proud of you, Dad, he said quietly. I nodded, knowing that the next few hours would change us both forever. The dinner was set. I could feel the weight of the air as I entered the room. My brother was already seated at the head of the table, trying to play the part of the good son. The tension in the room was palpable. The family members exchanged awkward glances, clearly sensing that something was different tonight. My brother, ever the manipulator, was already trying to size me up. He leaned back in his chair, pretending to be relaxed, but I knew better. He could feel the storm coming. So, Mason, he said with a smirk, I hope you're ready for all this drama you're stirring up. We're family, after all. I kept my expression neutral, but inside my anger simmered. He had always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in the eyes of the family. But tonight that was going to change. I'm not stirring up drama, I said calmly. I'm bringing the truth to light. He raised an eyebrow, clearly amused by my response. You think you're going to fix everything with your little revelations? You're just embarrassing yourself. I felt the burn of his words, but I didn't flinch. I'd come prepared. This was about more than my brother's petty games. This was about reclaiming my dignity. And then he did it. He tried to goad me further. You've always been the one in the background, haven't you? Always the quiet one. Now you think you can just step up and change everything? His words cut deep, but I was ready. I had known this moment would come. I had expected him to try and tear me down, but I wasn't going to let him. Not this time. I've been quiet, I said, my voice steady, but I'm done being quiet. This is the moment when the truth comes out. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the first piece of evidence. A financial record showing where he had been siphoning money from the family's inheritance. Money that was rightfully mine. The room fell into stunned silence as I laid out the facts, one by one. Every lie, every deceitful move he had made to keep his control over the family was there in black and white. My brother, now visibly shaken, tried to regain control. You don't know what you're talking about, he said, his voice trembling. This is all just a misunderstanding. But I wasn't done. I pulled out the second piece of evidence, something that hit him harder than anything else. The hidden inheritance, the money our father had left to me, money he had stolen from me for years. The room gasped. My brother, who had always been the one with the power, was now exposed for the liar and thief he was. There was no escaping it. He could no longer hide behind his manipulations. The truth was out, and there was no turning back. Then, in an unexpected twist, my estranged sister, the one who had always kept her distance, stood up. She held up a legal document, One that proved the inheritance wasn't just something I could claim, it was rightfully mine all along. She had the paperwork to back it up. My brother looked like he had been hit with a ton of bricks. His face drained of color, and for the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes. There was no way out for him now. The family began to react. Some were shocked. Some were horrified by the truth. Others, the ones who had been too afraid to speak up for years, finally found their voices. Some sided with me, others with him, but the family was forever divided. The long-held illusion of unity shattered in an instant. My brother, now desperate, tried to make one final attempt to salvage his reputation. He revealed something personal about me, something that could have hurt me, but it backfired. The rest of the family wasn't buying it. They saw him for what he was, a man willing to do anything to protect his power, no matter who he had to hurt. I stood tall, unmoving. I had done what I came to do. The truth was out, and I had finally been heard. I stepped outside for a moment, needing some space to breathe. The weight of everything that had happened crashed down on me. This battle was over, but the cost was high. I had exposed my brother, my family, and in doing so, I had lost something too. The family I had fought so hard to protect would never be the same. But then my son came out to join me. His eyes met mine, filled with pride. "You did the right thing, Dad," he said. I nodded, feeling the weight of the moment settle in. The truth had set me free, but there was still much more to come. My phone rang, cutting through the silence. It was a lawyer. My brother was trying to make one last move to regain control. I looked out over the property, feeling the weight of what was coming. The fight wasn't over yet. As I turned to my son, I spoke the words that were now my truth. This is just the beginning. The days after the confrontation felt like a whirlwind. I'd exposed the truth, but the weight of that victory was heavier than I had imagined. Sitting in the silence of my room, I reflected on everything that had happened. I kept replaying my brother's face when I laid out the evidence. I had finally done it, finally stood up for myself and the things I deserved. But as much as I had longed for this moment, I felt no joy. It was more of a relief than anything, and even that was bitter. I thought back to the look in my son's eyes when he saw me fight for what was right. He respected me, but I knew this wasn't the end. He could see the toll it had taken on me, just as I could see the burden it had placed on him. The victory came at a price, and that price was our family. I ran my hand over the papers on the desk, the very ones that had exposed my brother's deceit. The truth was out, but would it matter? Could I ever repair the fractures that had been carved into this family? As my son came to check on me later that evening, I gave him a tired smile and told him I was fine, but I wasn't. The relief from the confrontation didn't erase the destruction it had caused. Just as I was sinking into the weight of it all, my phone buzzed. It was my sister, one of the few people left in the family I still trusted. Her message was brief, but it held a weight of its own. "I'm in shock. What you did took guts, but there's more. I'll explain soon." Her words gave me a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was more to this story than I had realized. But then, a sinking feeling followed. If there was more to uncover, was it something I was ready to handle? The division in the family was growing. As expected, some people rallied behind me, but others clung to my brother, unwilling to face the truth. The tension was thick, like an ever-growing storm cloud over the family. My son noticed the shift in the atmosphere, but he wasn't saying much. I could tell he was processing, and I knew this wasn't easy for him. I called for a family meeting. It felt like the right time to address everything head-on, to see where everyone stood. The meeting began with the usual formalities, but underneath the pleasantries, emotions were simmering. No one knew exactly what to say. "I did what I had to do," I said, looking around the room. "I didn't do it for me. I did it for this family, to finally end the lies we've been living." Some in the room nodded, but others remained silent. I could feel their judgment. They didn't understand. They thought I was doing this out of ego. They didn't see that I was trying to give us back the truth. One voice piped up, louder than the rest. "But Mason, what makes you think you're the one to decide what's right for the family? Maybe you're the one who's caused all this dysfunction." My niece. I had almost forgotten about her. She hadn't said much through all of this, but now she was speaking out. Her words stung, but I couldn't back down now. Not for anyone. "No," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "I didn't cause this. I didn't build the lies. I'm here to tear them down." The room fell into silence. I had hoped that the truth would heal everything, but now I could see it only widened the rift. People were taking sides, and the divide seemed impossible to bridge. Still, I couldn't regret what I had done. I stood firm, knowing I'd made the right decision, no matter the consequences. As the family meeting ended, a new storm was brewing outside, and not just in our hearts. The legal battle was just beginning. My brother's lawyer had already started working to discredit me. I could feel the pressure building as the media began to catch wind of the drama. People outside the family started taking sides, some applauding me for standing up, others questioning my methods. The phone calls from my lawyer didn't help. The legal team was already getting ready for the long battle ahead. They'd warned me it would be messy, and it would. But just when I thought things couldn't get worse, my lawyer uncovered something even more troubling. A piece of evidence that could tip the scales in my favor. My brother had been siphoning money from the family's finances long before I knew anything about it. He had covered his tracks well, but now the truth was exposed. This was the leverage I needed. Still, despite this small victory, I couldn't shake the feeling that the emotional toll was going to be the heaviest burden of all. My son was seeing me crumble. My wife, who had always been my rock, was starting to show cracks in her support. She feared the strain this fight was putting on our relationship. I could see the worry in her eyes, hear the quiet desperation in her voice. One evening, after another long day of legal preparations, we sat down. She spoke first. "Mason, I understand why you're doing this, but I'm scared. Scared that we won't survive this fight. And what will we have left when it's over? A family destroyed?" Her words hit harder than I expected. For the first time, I had to question myself. Was this worth it? Was fighting for justice worth losing everything else? But I knew what I had to do. I couldn't back down. Not now. Not when the truth was finally within reach. Just as I was about to speak, my phone rang again. This time, it was from my old mentor. Mason. His voice was warm, filled with the wisdom of someone who had seen it all. "The hardest battles, the ones that really shape us, aren't the ones that make us rich or famous. They're the ones that make us whole. You've got this." Those words gave me the strength I needed. The fight wasn't just about inheritance. It wasn't just about winning. It was about restoring my dignity, reclaiming my legacy. I walked into the courtroom the next morning with renewed strength. My son's unwavering support had given me the courage I needed to face what was coming. But just as I took my seat, my brother's lawyer dropped a bombshell, a settlement offer. It was tempting. Money in exchange for silence about everything that had happened. I froze. Was silence worth the price? As I stood before the judge, I realized that everything I had fought for, everything I had sacrificed, had led to this moment. The decision I would make now would change everything for my family and for me. The question lingered in my mind. Could I live with the cost of silence, or would I fight on? The weight of the decision settled heavily on my shoulders. As I stood at the crossroads, the settlement offer glared at me from the papers spread out before me. Peace was within my reach. A chance to end this battle and move on with my life. But at what cost? Could I truly live with myself if I walked away now? The thought of letting my brother off the hook, letting him slip away without facing the full consequences of his actions, gnawed at me. I closed my eyes and let the memories flood in. The countless family gatherings where my brother's manipulations ran rampant, my mother's favoring of him over me, and my own quiet acceptance of the injustice. Years of silence, of swallowing the bitterness and resentment, had led me here. This wasn't just about the inheritance, the money, or the property. This was about reclaiming my dignity, about finally standing up for the truth, no matter the cost. But as the decision hung in the air, there was still a part of me deep down that longed for the peace of the settlement, the easy way out. The weight of the past was so heavy. Just as I was about to make my choice, my phone rang. It was my daughter. Her voice trembled on the other end of the line. "Dad," she said, "I've been going through some old files. There's more. He's been hiding crucial evidence. I'm not sure how we missed it, but this could change everything." My heart skipped a beat. I couldn't believe it. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about exposing the truth, not just for my own peace, but for the integrity of the family. My resolve hardened. This was the last push I needed. The fight wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I stood up, pacing around the room. The next steps were clear. I was going to take this to the end, but I knew that what came next would tear this family apart. The phone call from my daughter seemed to ignite a spark in me, but I also knew the weight of what I was about to do. The family was already divided. Some still sided with my brother, others believed in my fight. My son had always been by my side, unwavering, but my wife was becoming more and more distant. The toll this was taking on us was visible. She was worried about me, about us, and about the future. We had been through a lot together, but this was different. We sat down one night, and the conversation we had was harder than anything I'd ever faced. "Mason," she said, voice low, "this fight, it's eating us alive. Is it worth it? Is justice really worth all the pain we're going through?" I didn't know how to answer. I could feel the pressure of it all, the years of unresolved tension, but I couldn't back down. Not now, not after everything. "I can't stop now," I said, my voice steady but filled with the weight of what I was carrying. "If I let him get away with this, I'll never be able to live with myself. But I don't know if we'll survive this." Her eyes softened, but the concern remained. "I just want you to come back to me, Mason. The man I married." The conversation ended with silence between us. I knew she was scared, and I didn't blame her. I was scared too, but I wasn't going to give up, not when the truth was finally within reach. Things started escalating after that. The tension was palpable in every family meeting. There was no hiding it anymore. The cracks in our foundation were wide and deep. Then, in the middle of all this, my brother reached out to me. The message came through one evening, almost as if it had been carefully timed. He was apologizing for everything, for the lies, the manipulation, for everything that had led us to this point. I read the message, disbelief and anger swelling up inside me. Was he sorry? Or was this just another trick, another attempt to manipulate me? His words seemed sincere, but I'd heard them all before. The apology felt like a last-ditch effort to save face. I stared at the phone screen, unsure of what to do with his message. It shook me, that's for sure. For a moment, I wondered if this was my chance to heal the wounds, to stop the bleeding. But could I really forgive him after everything? Could I trust him again? I wasn't sure. I didn't know if I had it in me. In the midst of all this emotional turmoil, I uncovered something even more damning. The financial records I had been going through told a story I hadn't expected. My brother had not only manipulated the family for years, but had also hidden money, my money, from me. I couldn't believe it. I confronted him about it, expecting guilt, maybe even shame. But what I got was rage. He didn't apologize. Instead, he lashed out, blaming me for everything, accusing me of sabotaging the family, of tearing us apart. I had expected this, but it didn't make it any easier to hear. Later, I found myself alone with my wife again, confessing the weight of it all. "I'm not sure, baby," I said. Maybe I've gone too far. Maybe this isn't worth it. She looked at me, her eyes filled with both love and pain. You've done what you needed to do. Don't let him win. Not now. Her words reminded me of why I had started this fight in the first place. It wasn't about winning or losing. It was about standing up for myself and what was right. I had to finish this. Just when I thought I couldn't handle any more twists, another one came. I discovered that the judge in my case was a distant relative, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. This revelation could either be a blessing or a curse. What would they think of me, of the family? The day of the trial arrived, and I walked into the courtroom, my son at my side, and a few others who believed in me. The tension was suffocating. My brother's lawyer wasted no time in trying to paint me as emotionally unstable, accusing me of being driven by revenge. I couldn't let him get away with it. I had the evidence, and I wasn't backing down. My lawyer did his part, presenting the financial documents, the hidden transactions, and everything that proved my brother's guilt. The room went quiet as the truth began to sink in. Then came the bombshell. Just as the jury went to deliberate, I received an anonymous message. Someone from within my own family had been sabotaging my case. Who? Who could I trust? The tension was unbearable. The trial had taken its toll on me. The next steps were uncertain. Would justice prevail, or would my own family tear me apart once again? Finally, the jury returned with their verdict. My brother was found guilty of financial fraud, but the damages were far less than I had hoped. The victory felt hollow. I had won, but the cost had been too great. My relationship with my brother was destroyed, and the family would never be the same. I left the courtroom feeling conflicted. Yes, I had won, but at what cost? When I returned home, there was a letter waiting for me. It was from my brother, an apology. He expressed regret and offered an olive branch. My first instinct was to throw it away. Could I ever trust him again? As I stood in the quiet of my home, the weight of everything settled on me. This fight was over, but the war within me was far from done.